Hello, everybody. My name is Cecilia Pacheco, and I am the Economic Development and Project Specialist at UNM Rainforest Innovations. Thank you for joining us today for our very first New Mexico Rainforest University webinar of the year. Today we have with us Denise Pliskin, who is the Senior Director of Product Development Strategy for Spec Design, and she will be presenting on product design for us today. So here she is.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I hope that this is going to be a fun and worthwhile hour of your time. So what we're going to talk about today is making it real, like the steps to designing a great product. So we're going to go over a phase-based approach to product design, and I'm going to take you through a case study that I'll talk about in a little bit that we'll walk through each of the different phases so you can actually see what is happening in each of these phases. At the end, we'll talk a little bit about what we haven't covered, other things to consider. And then we'll leave time for questions at the end, but please feel free to interrupt me. I think that sometimes questions can't wait, and it will help me to make sure that the presentation is really focused on the things that matter to you. So I've been with Spec Design at the end of February. It will be 22 years, hard to imagine, but that is how long I've been there. So I started out as a product designer and a project manager, and now I work more as strategic development, working with clients to put together programs that work for them as far as getting their products from the whiteboard to customer shelves. So at Spec, we're in Silicon Valley, and I'm in Santa Fe. And again, you know, we're a product design studio. We want to create great products for our clients. We've been around for 20 years, and we do all these different things. We do branding, packaging, logistics, supply chain. We're going to focus today really on industrial design and mechanical engineering. I'm going to show you a quick little video about our process. This is a medical product that we did for Stanford University. And I know all of you guys who work with the rainforest, you guys do lots of prototyping. Oops. So I've already talked a little bit about this, but we're going to go talk about going from concept all the way through manufacturing. And we'll talk a little bit about some of these other goals as far as funding, cash, different things that you need to pay attention to. But again, that's not going to be the focus of today. So what I'm going to use in the background of this talk is a case study. This is a product that was recently announced by eMist. It's an electrostatic cleaner that right now in the COVID world is very important. It's used on airlines, in the White House, hotels, lots of different places. So that's their technology, the electrostatics. They came to us, they had a first generation product that was not easy to manufacture. It was not designed for scale. And that's one of the things that we'll talk about. In the industrial design was, if not non-existent, it was very clunky. So that's what they came to us to see how we can make their product more manufacturable, have a great ID, and bring the cost down as much as possible. All things that will matter to you. So I'm not going to talk about the EMIS product here because we did not do a phase 1 discovery. Phase 1 discovery is really going out and understanding who your users are and what your value proposition is, what's the unmet need that you'll address. They knew all of those things. They already had a customer base. But if you're a startup, this is the most important first step for you because you want to make sure when you say what unmet need will you address, it really is what question are you answering? How are people doing things? When people always talk about how Apple did not do user insights research, that's not the case. We actually did a lot of user insights research for Apple. So if somebody would have asked, do you need a smartphone before there was one? No, nobody could answer that question because they didn't know what it was. But you could ask, how do you get information? What would you like to be able to carry more information around with you? There's a number of different questions you could ask, even if somebody doesn't know the category of your product. And there's a bunch of different ways to do that. You can go to professionals who do it for a living. If you're doing it on your own, you're going to work with friends and families. You'll come up with questionnaires and talk to them about what the category of product that you're trying to find out information. And again, you want to find out what their unmet needs are. Another way to do this is online surveys, of course, interviews and ethnographic observation, which you can't do now in the time of COVID. So we're going to go on to phase 2. So phase 2 is we've already established who the user is. And we've probably, what I didn't cover there, we've probably found out what we could about what the brand aspirations are and the business goals. So in the first phase, in this phase 2, we call concept design, and we're looking at what's the product vision? What are the brand attributes? Again, who is it for? And something very important that I haven't mentioned yet, which are the experience principles. You want to make sure that you're designing a great user experience with your product. So what you see here in the upper right is very early phase sketches. And you'll see that this sketch, this was one of probably 40 sketches that were done early on. And you'll see that that sketch, watch it get translated from here into these first concepts and into the final design. And you'll really see that some of these first concepts are what we ended up with the product. So in phase 3, what we've done in phase 2 is we've shown a series of different concepts, as you saw here, and we've met with the client and we've gone over all the different attributes. And at this point, we're going to move to down select. And usually what happens is that it's not like I want C, it's like, well, I like C, but I like aspects of D and I like aspects of B. And then it's the industrial designer's job to amalgamate all of that different feedback. And so here you see, as we have refined the concept and we've built a rapid prototype. So that's what you're seeing here. This is an early phase rapid prototype. This is not ready to be built yet. It's not ready for tooling. The mechanical engineers are already involved to make sure we understand how it's going to be engineered and how it's going to be manufactured. So we're already starting to look at all of those issues, but the engineering has not been primary up to this point. And please, again, interrupt me anytime if you have any questions. So at this point, now engineering is primary because we're going to start building our at least a couple of rounds of prototypes. So the purpose of doing these P0 and P1 prototypes, as we call them, is to verify the fit and function of all of the parts. We want to make sure that we expose failure early because it's a lot easier to fix issues now than once we start tooling parts. The other thing you can do with these early prototypes is you can do some limited field testing. So these are functional prototypes. I'm going to go back to this picture. This is a non-functional prototype. This really is just to have a sense of the size and how it's going to look and how it's going to feel. Now we have a functional prototype. It doesn't look like the final product, but it should prove out the final design. We're now starting to work with our manufacturers, and we're going to do something that is called Dfm, Designed for Manufacturing. And this is where we're working with whoever is going to be doing the tooling or manufacturing the parts to make sure we catch any flaws in the design, mistakes, or any improvements that we can make. And at the end of this phase, we're going to have a complete engineering package, and that's going to include all of the CAD. It's going to include a bill of material. And that bill of material is going to have everything from the tooled parts down to each screw. So literally everything that goes into the product is in this bill of material. Now I want to stop for a second here. Often when startups come to us, they're coming to us because they need to get to a funding round. They either are trying to get angel funds, sometimes they're trying to get venture funds, or sometimes they're going to do Kickstarter. You will stop at a different place in this development cycle depending on what kind of funding you're going after, assuming that you're not self-funding. So you very well might say, I'm going to stop here because I can prove out the concept here. Again, if you're a startup, you want to spend as little of your own money as possible, and you want to get to a funding event, again, with as little time and as little funding as you can. Often you're going to stop here to prove out your design. You might go to here where you really have something that's ready to go into tooling, but you don't want to spend the capital expense for tooling and to go into full bore manufacturing. So these are business steps that you need to look at along the way to figure out where it is you do want to stop in your development phase. So at this point, we're now ready to move into working with the manufacturers. There's a lot that goes into this. This particular client, eMist, was very committed to working with American companies. They had had problems with their supply chain in the past, and they did not want to work with offshore companies. So we chose a company in Portland who could make the tooling and make all the plastic parts. again, the decision on who's going to manufacture the product, where it's going to be manufactured, has a lot to do with how many parts are you going to produce, who are you selling it to, what's your supply chain strategy, what's your budget, and you really need to have a partner that is experienced in this to help you make those decisions. Now, some people will use us for that. Some people have their own manufacturing engineers, but this, you have spent this time up front to figure out who your client is, figure out what your design is going to be, implement that design, and then you're moving into this whole new world of manufacturing where what you have designed so far, you're now making it real. And it's where the joy and the absolute heartache comes in. Everybody will tell you hardware is hard, and this is where it gets hard, right? When you actually are producing parts, you're cutting steel, you're putting an investment in time and money. Not that you haven't already, but this is, like I said, if you need to make changes to your product, you want to make them here. You don't want to make them here. So at this point, we're now working with the manufacturer. I talked about DFM. We've started to do it in the earlier phase, but we're really working on it on an ongoing basis here as they're starting to build their tools. So here you see these are the first tooled parts that were made for this product. We worked with there's two different types of people that you work with in this manufacturing phase. There are the manufacturers, the people who do the tooling and do the plastic parts. There are the people that you are buying commercial parts from, but then you have your contract manufacturer, and the contract manufacturer is often different than who is making the individual parts. In this case, they worked with a company you've probably heard of called Flex. Again, they wanted to work with somebody stateside, and these folks, although they have factories offshore, they also have a number of factories in the United States. They happen to work with a plant in South Carolina. So what happens is this point is that the contract manufacturer gets the first batch of parts and builds what is called a pilot unit. And the pilot unit is going to prove out the assembly procedure, and it's going to be where things get caught that haven't been caught before. I've been doing this for many decades, and I have never seen a product go to market without some heartache during this process. As I said, this is when things get real. So, for instance, we designed the tank for this product, and we actually were responsible for producing it and selling it back to the client, and we had problems with it linking. So let me go back here. So just so you know, this tank here, this holds the liquid. The liquid goes down into here. It goes through what is called an umbilical to the gun, where an electrostatic charge it's passed through. And we had trouble with these tanks leaking. You know, it was not something that was anticipated, and it was something that we had to work on to resolve. There were other issues that had to be worked on to resolve. This is something that is important to take into account. And I would always suggest never assume it's going to go smoothly. I wish that were not the case, but in my 40 some years of experience, that is the case. Something is guaranteed to go wrong.
Hi, Denise. We have a
Yes.
question from Lauren LeBou.
Okay.
Says, do you provide help with the patent process for the beginning phases or just focus on design and functionality?
So we help with the patent process. Our head of engineering had done, I think, over 60 patents of his own. We don't do any of the legal parts of it. What we do is we'll do all of the descriptions and we'll do the drawings that are needed. But I don't know, over the years, probably at least 100 products that we've worked on for clients, they have gotten patents. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, she says perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lauren. And by the way, these guys, EMIS, do have a patent, but their patent is on their electrostatic part of this. And again, we did not do the electronics for the electrostatic. There was nothing patentable on this particular design as far as the mechanical design goes, but it is something that we always look for clients. We're doing another product for them, and there are a number of patents that we're going to have on that is based on the mechanical design. So it is something that we always look out for our clients. So here we have a product that has gone through all the way from understanding who the product user is, how it's going to be used, what are the product requirements. That's something that I did not talk about, which is something called a PRD, a product requirement document. So this is something you want to make sure you do early on. It's an evergreen document, meaning it will change as you go, but you want to make sure when you get to the end that you have checked off all the boxes. The product does what you set out to have it do. And at this point, the design team has taken a back seat. We're on call with issues that come up during manufacturing and make changes as are needed. But hopefully by this point, you've got a stable product that you are shipping to clients who are happy. And this product has just started shipping to clients. So far, so good. So any questions on the design or any of the process before I move on to what some of the other things are that you want to consider? Okay, let's talk about some next steps. Next steps is not exactly the right term, right? Because you have been probably working on this all the way from the beginning. So here are, some of the ways, and you probably all know this, to look to see where to go for capital, which is angel, traditional VCs, friends and family, or do it on your own. I always discourage people from doing it completely on their own. Spec has been in business for, I've been with Spec for 22 years, so 24 years. And we work with everybody from an individual entrepreneur to Facebook and Google and Apple. So the full range. I think you guys all know that it's a crapshoot whether you're going to be successful or not. And designing and producing hardware is an expensive venture. So I think it's really important where you can to get some outside funding. You don't find a lot of product designers designing their own products, just because a great product does not necessarily mean a successful product. There's a lot of things that go into it. You could have the best design, most beautiful product, but if you don't have the right marketing, or you have not answered the question of need correctly, your beautiful product's not necessarily going to be successful. So that not to discourage anybody, it's the coolest thing you can do, but it's something that's very important to keep in mind, especially when you're looking at spending your own money. Some other things that I think that are really important to think about, because often entrepreneurs will come to us and they've got a really great idea, but they haven't answered the question is, what's your supply chain strategy going to be? Do you have a channel strategy? I don't know if you're familiar with the spec phone cases, but that was our company. It was a spin out from Spec Design. And we came up with the very first case for the iPod, not AirPods, but the iPod. And probably most of you are too young to have remembered that, but we did a case for that. And we knew nothing about channel strategy. We thought, okay, we've got a cool case. Surely Belkin or somebody like that will be interested. Well, they weren't, because they don't want to buy one, what they call SKU from a company. They want to have multiple products that they're buying from a company. So that was an issue that we had to deal with, and we ended up hiring somebody as CEO when we spun out Spec Products, who was from Monster Cable, because she really understood that channel strategy. And how do you get the word out? What is your branding and marketing strategy? Again, great product, but if nobody hears about it, nobody's going to buy it. And do you have sufficient capital, not just to do your product development, but to do branding, to do packaging design? We haven't talked about packaging design today, but if you've got a consumer product, your out-of-the-box experience is very important. So you've got to understand what are all the discrete elements of designing a product and getting it to market. And the technology and the product design is one part of a big ecosystem of product development strategy. So I think we've talked a little bit about, not all of these, but a number of these things. So branding, again, what's your identity? How do you communicate? What's your brand story? Do you have packaging that is going to be match your brand identity and the user experience that you want people to have? Again, do you want to look all the way and have consistent branding all the way from the product, packaging, website? So all of this is part of what we call marketing 101. So what is your marketing and branding strategy? The other thing that's really important is, do you have the right people on the bus with you? If you've got the right people, you usually can find a good niche for them. But you need to look to see, who do you want to have as part of your company, and who are you going to rely on for outside services? The companies that come to us range from, again, the single entrepreneur all the way to big players. Sometimes they have their own engineering teams, but they want to bring in outside services because they don't have enough folks on hand. they're a small company, the single entrepreneur, and they do not want to spend the time or spend the money to hire somebody to be part of the company, to be a full-time employee if they're going to do one product. So that's one of the strategies that you need to look at, not just for design, but for marketing, for your website, for all of the different things. Do you need to have a financial person on board, or is that an outside person you can use? So these are going to be part of your team composition strategy. And then, are you ready for a board? At what point does it make sense for you to bring in a board of advisors? Or do you really want to stick with having advisors? There's a different legal ramification to somebody who's an advisor versus somebody who's on the board. And I think for young companies, advisors are essential. Having great advisors who have gone through the process, who can make suggestions for you, who can tell you about landmines that you want to avoid as you're going through this. And then again, and this is a pretty emotional thing, which is, what is your exit strategy? A lot of people have their product that they want to do and they really want to hold on to it. It's like, no, this is my product and I do want to own a company. And that's a question. Do you really want to run your own company? Do you want to be responsible for supply chain? Do you want to be responsible for product returns? Do you want to be responsible for accounting? Do you want to be responsible for all those things? And if you do, and that excites you, then you want to run your own company. But there are other ways to do it. You can partner. And if you're going to partner, who would you partner with? Maybe your technology is really cool and you can license it, although I see I've got a misspelling there, but you get the point. So some people have a great technology. They want to develop the technology. They're going to get up just part way in as far as to prove out the concept, and then they're going to license that, and they'll get recurring revenue with a licensing fee for whoever is licensing the product. And then the other is to sell the company or to get acquired by a larger company. And again, if that's something that you have in mind, you want to pay attention. Any of these exit strategies, you want to pay attention to that from the beginning, because that's going to impact what your product development strategy is. Also, it is going to have a huge impact on how you get funded, because if you are going to get traditional VC funding, they're not going to be interested in a company that you're going to hold on to and grow incrementally. They're going to be way more interested in something that is rapid growth and rapid return. So all of these are part of the ecology of your strategy that you've got to be paying attention to. And that's it. So please ask me questions.
And everyone can feel free to unmute yourselves if you have a question.
Hi, my name's Danica. I have a question.
Great.
I was wondering, so in the case of the static e-cleaner, what would you imagine was like?
I'm not hearing you anymore. Cecilia?
Yeah, I think there was a connection issue. She can type it into the chat, or I don't know if she was having a connection issue or something.
Okay, why don't we go on to somebody else, and when we get her back, we'll go back to her question.
Denise, I have a question.
Okay, Susan.
What kinds of questions do you ask a product developer, okay, when they come to you with a product? What are the priority questions you want to ask from your standpoint as a product developer before you decide, they're ready? What do you want to know?
I want to know if they have a product definition. So do they have they might not have a full product requirement document, but do they understand what the product, at least what they want the performance to be? So we understand what our marching orders are. I want to understand what their value proposition is. So when we start to design the product, we're knowing what we need to emphasize. And I really need to know what their funding strategy is to help them understand what their first funding events are. So we don't take them too far. We're not having them spend too much money in the development cycle, that we're breaking it up. So I think that it is technical requirements, knowing their value prop and who their users are, and what their funding strategy is.
Hi, Denise. We have a question from Alaric, and then we have several more.
Great.
So this first question is, are there rules of thumb for the capital investments needed at each stage? For example, prototyping should be 20% of the expected profit, etc.
I have never broken it down in terms of profit. What we do, we'll break it down in terms of how much each phase. So we always let the clients know, we give them a phase-based budget. So they can look to see, this is how much it's gonna cost us to get this far. We don't know at the beginning what it's gonna cost to do a prototype. It just depends on the complexity and how many we're building. But we've done it enough that we can give them estimates. So that's basically what we will do, but I have not broken it down to amortize development costs. Now that is something that the client should be doing, is looking to see if they're going to spend a couple $100,000 on developing the product. How do you amortize that across your expected life of your product? Susan could actually answer this question better than I.
Hey, I'm going to help out here. Everybody, some of you know both Denise and I, we are mentors for the Innovation Corps for the University of New Mexico that's funded by the National Science Foundation. And oh, by the way, that iCore session is, if you're a student at UNM or any of UNM campuses, we start up on February 7th. I don't know, Cecilia, has that closed? Has applications for that program closed?
I believe they're open until the end of this week, or like the first week of February. I can't remember.
So those of you that are students at UNM, I don't care whether you're postdocs or undergraduates, take a look at the Rainforest Innovations website and look for Innovation Corps or iCore. Anthony Menicucci, who's on here, is one of our star graduates from that program. So basically you ask the question, how do you figure out profit? Well, we work a little bit differently when we're talking about a startup, okay? We go back initially to the value prop, as Denise wants to hear that, okay? And we take a look at the technology that you've got, but we want to take the technology you've got, the device you've got, such as this e-sprayer or e-mister, and we want to make sure that you've shown that to potential clients and said, okay, based on this drawing and this story, and Anthony did this really well, based on this story, what am I missing? What features do you like? If this thing can do it faster, better, more clearly, it can clean, it's got better results, it gets 99% whatever coverage, that's something you're going to want to use versus what you're currently using. So we focus very, very much on that. And it's after we've done value prop, who are the markets, what does the customer think of it, that we start thinking about costs and we map things out. Now, my background is as an angel investor in about 70 different companies. And what I was always looking for is the first year and a half, what are they doing? Because when you come to me and tell me that this market right now, your first year is going to be $35 million, I'm going to go, no, it's not. And so what I want you to do, and what other investors want you to do, is to take a look at what are you going to need to get your design work done. At the same time, while you're finding out, does anybody want to buy it? Denise and I have both experienced the field of dreams. It's my idea, it's great, my family thinks it's great, my friends think it's great, but who wants to buy it? There's got to be an answer to that, because Denise and her team can't design anything until you can tell them, how's it going to be used? Okay, they really need to know the environment it's going into, whether there's any regulations for that environment. They need to know that you understand how the user is going to use it. And that's what we worry about first before we start. Let's put a budget together with cost and percentages and profits. What we do once we understand our product, once we understand what the client wants, once we've got a preliminary design, and in the case of several of the companies we've worked with through UNM, they've already got their designs and patents done. We want to then figure out how we're going to prototype it and test it and how we're going to use it and what our audience is going to tell us, what our customers are going to tell us about what it's going to cost. We do deep market research. There's nothing you can do to get away from that, to figure out what your competition is, how much they're charging for each device that they sell, how does yours compare. And one of our students, a guy by the name of Juan Faria Briceño, did an incredible job of taking a look at what is the first phase of my product, the second phase of my product, the third phase of my product. His product was deep technology. And he had to figure out at each phase what it was going to be based on the feedback he got, what he was going to get out as a prototype, and what was that payment going to look like? Was it going to be they were going to give him samples to test, or he was going to give it to them to figure out what try it out? So in other words, we're talking business model now. What kind of business model are you going to use? How are these things going to be sold? How are they going to get to market? Do you have partners? Are they going to go through channels who typically sell these kinds of things? Once we've figured out all of that, we can do a proposed solution of what it's going to cost us to get our first prototype done, our first minimal viable product, what it's going to cost to get it out to market, what it's going to cost to sell. There is always a cost of sale. Once we've got that and we've got a preliminary cost of what it costs, then we have to talk about such thing as what revenue are we going to get out of it. We don't use the words in startups, profit. We don't use that word at all, because we know we're not looking at profit until a year and a half to 2 years, 3 years, and we want to see it for profitable with a number of sales in a space of 3 years. Denise said absolutely correctly. People who invest in these kinds of companies are looking for an equity event. We want it to happen quickly. So that's what we're looking for. Have you done your research? Have you done these 3 phases of what it's going to cost? And then have you thought about how you compare to your competitors and what can you add on to it that is going to give you that margin you need to continue to advance your products in the market? Because if you want to be in this long term, you're not going to have one product. I only know one company that absolutely went into the hundreds of millions of dollars with one product, and that was a gentleman from San Diego, California. His company was WD-40. So I hope that has answered your question about, do I say 20% is profit? it depends on the market, the product, the technology, everything about it, because you are going to continue to sell that thing. And if you're going to build a company to do it and your investors agree that you can, that there's not going to be this huge equity event, but instead there's going to be channels, partners, licensing. We're going to take a look at what it's going to take for you to administer that company for some period of time. We hate getting into that because that's expensive. Think of a big company like Raytheon Missile Systems. 40 to 50% of every contract they get is given to administration, and they're typical of their industry. So we want to see a clear price at the end of 9 to 18 months that we think can go to market, and customers have told us they're willing to buy it at that price. Hopefully that was not too long-winded, but
No, that was great. So Susan demonstrates how important it is to have advisors. If you are lucky enough to have Susan, I don't know if anybody compares to her as far as what she can offer for an advisor, but this is why having an advisor for your startup is really important. So I see here, okay, so Danica has asked, what is usually the biggest inhibiting factor when it comes to getting a product from inception to market besides funding? Often one has an idea about what it's going to take to for the technology to work, and you run into problems. So I think that it really is the R&D portion of it, of the engineering, if it's complex electronics. So it's usually in those design, if we're talking not about what makes it successful, but actually what makes it a product, I think it would be in the area of proving out the technology. Obviously, getting it to market, there's as Susan talks about, there's a whole list of things that can be difficult. Getting the word out, getting the branding, getting the voice of your brand right, all of those different things. Danica, does that answer your question? I'm going to take your silence as a yes. Hector asked, do you use a specific methodology to design the products? And what specific approaches to testing it on the market? So let's talk about the methodology. Basically, the methodology we use is this phase-based approach. What we like to do is we like to start with your idea, and then we go wide and we look at all of the different possibilities. Then we will focus in on refining that, and then we'll go wide again. So we go through these different stage gates where we're doing exploration, and then where we're refining it and moving it along to the next stage. So I'm not sure if that answers what you're asking for as far as the methodology. We do early on for industrial design and branding, we do something called mood boards, where we help people understand and have a visual representation of what it is that we're going to design. So I'm not sure if that answers your question. Hector, I don't know if you're there, that you can let me know if I answered your question. And then you ask, do you have any specific approaches to testing in the market? Okay, Hector, thank you. So there are lots of things you can do to test it in the market. Before you go from your early concept phase to designing it, you can take it out and get feedback from potential users. If somebody who has the funds will hire a user insights group that will go out and show the product, ask questions, get feedback, and you can do that at different phases along the way. With eMist for the electrostatic cleaner, what they did is they already had a customer base, so they took it out to their existing customers at each different phase to get feedback. So it just depends. It depends on your budget, if you're doing it yourself or if you're being able to hire somebody outside to do it.
We do use a specific methodology within Innovation Core. We use something called the business model canvas.
Yes.
You can look it up online. It's for free. And it looks like you move left to right when you look at it. We actually start in the middle with value prop. What the Innovation Core is all about is helping the building startup take a look at what their markets are really and what other customers have to say about it. The ultimate goal is to take this sense that everybody in the world wants our product and focus it down until we've got a focused market that we know we can sell to, needs to, and is willing to pay for what we're going to ask for this product. And that means you pick up the phone, take your cell phone, you pick it up and you call the CEO of KLA or the CEO of AT&T or the CEO of, really, we do that. And do we have success at it? At the national level, they mandate you have to do 100 of those interviews in 6 weeks. Some of the people who are in this class right now and some of the people who have graduated from I-Core have done as many as 400 interviews in 7 weeks. What do those interviews provide? What they think of your product, what features do they like, what features do they need, what's missing, and some idea of what they're willing to pay, and they get you to people, other people, who are the decision makers within their organizations, because hopefully they've gotten pretty excited. You're going to find that 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 people who are really excited about what you're doing. This model is called the Business Model Canvas. There are books written about it. You can get those from Amazon, or if you're a student at UNM, a postdoc at UNM, you can apply for the Innovation Core.
That's right. It is, as Susan says, it is a really great program to go through and to learn all of these different steps. Hi, Raphael. You want to know what examples of what type of information you should know or have when contacting a potential investor or VC. Ideally, you would have what Susan just talked about. You would have done these interviews. The business canvas is a great tool to use and it's available online. I can send you a copy of it actually. And you want to have your product development roadmap. You want to have your financial strategy together. You want to have your business plan. I think most importantly, if you go back to looking at being able to communicate, what is your value proposition? We didn't talk a lot about secondary research. So the secondary research is looking to see what is the competitive landscape. So if you're going to do a product in a field where there are other products out there, how are you different? What is your value proposition? Why would somebody want to buy your product over somebody else's product? So those are the different things that you want to put together for your disclosure package for your investors.
There's various stages of talking to investors. There's 2 kinds of investors, angels and VCs. Angels are typically looking at things that are under 3 million. And that's not the investment they're doing. That's the proposed value at the point. So they're early stage and they're looking at such things as personal funds. What have you done so far? Where are you with the product? They typically hand off to a VC at what's called, or they stay with the company through what's called an A-level round of investments. There's a B level, there's a C level, there's a D level. Very rarely do companies get to C and D. Some do, and they're generally in the top 1%. But what you're talking about in terms of doing an investor presentation, do any of you have a 90-second pitch right now where you say, hi, have you ever wondered how you solve the following problem? Well, I've come up with a solution to that, and I'd like to talk with you about it. That's pitch 1. Pitch 2 is 5 minutes. You're at a networking event. You sit down with them, you talk to them. There's a whole format to that. And you talk to them about what you're doing. They ask you questions. Any longer than that, they're going to they're going to lose interest. But if they say to you, I'd like to meet you at my office, now you're talking about something called a slide deck, a pitch slide deck. It's no more than 10 to 12 slides. It follows through the steps of the business canvas. It shows what your timeline is going to be, what it's going to cost to get you to market. And it asks for what it is you need in that initial first stage. You're pre-A. You don't have any investors. You have no product in the market. You may or may not have some prototypes out there, and you have no sales. Okay. Once you get to the point where you've got about 1,000 sales, let's say, and I'm not talking, desktop mats for your desk that are electrostatically correct. I'm talking about maybe a more complex product. Once you've got that prototype done, your patents are done, you've done your testing, you know that it works, you're starting to collect data, and you've got people where you, like maybe you came up with a solar irradiance device like Anthony did, photovoltaic irradiance device. You're going to have that thing out in the field. You've got data, you've worked with P&M. Now you're looking at major investors because you're at the point where you got a prototype and you want to start selling. Okay. So investors come into the investments with you at various stages, and at each stage, your investment's different. With angels, they're not looking for a business plan. They're looking for an executive summary. They're looking for this pitch deck, but they're not looking for a business plan. They're going to look to see, did you do the business model canvas? But after all of that, the bulk of them make an investment based on you. Do you have the passion, the commitment? Can you express what you're doing? Are you building a field of dreams? Have you talked to customers? Because if you haven't talked to customers, they don't want to talk to you. If we are past that point and you're ready for serious investment to get to market, you are going to have a full pitch. You may have done some due diligence, but let me tell you what VCs do. They dig into your company. They expose everything. And they want to see a financial system, all that kind of good stuff that you think about when you think of good, big corporations. So the answer to your question, it depends. It depends on what stage you're at. It depends upon what you need the money for. And is there a good model for doing that? Yeah, we teach a really good model in iCore. And you can see some of those presentations online at the Rainforest Innovations library of these various presentations that have been done, okay? And we do some of them through the university programs as well. University program is for community members and students. You'll see those. And those are also videotaped, and they're not videotaped because they're not taped anymore. The CDs of those are online. Electronic files, digital files are online. You can take a look at those. If you want to get yourself involved with some coaching, each one of the campuses like Valencia, which is with whom I work, we're virtual right now. So anybody can join us online, listen to the workshops, come to our boot camps, and get 30-minute sessions with the mentors, such as myself or any of the other people who are doing that. And then the Lobo Rainforest has a Friday mentor hours, and just look online to see who's going to be there. They do them virtually, and you have a 30-minute session with an expert, and you can tell them what you're doing, and they do keep things confidential, and they'll give you advice, and you can drop into those Friday mentoring sessions at various stages when you're ready to do it. Or you can do the intense mentoring through Innovation Core if you're a student or a postdoc or a professor, or you can look at the university program at the various campuses, and all of that is at the Rainforest Innovation Center website.
And Susan is going to be doing a talk next week on designing, creating, and renovating your business model. So as you can tell by listening to her, she's somebody worth listening to. Great. Any other questions?
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I had a couple questions for you.
Of course.
Yeah, so just to second what you said, I do some plastic injection molding work. In fact, I got two products that I've already disclosed to STC, and I was hoping to do the I-Core program on them, but I've got just to reiterate what you say. I mean, I've designed it's probably 20 products now, and I've sold one, not that well. not that all of them are great, but yeah, and you're looking at like 10 iterations a piece. So, you know, if each CAD design takes you a day, or, you know, to start off with a day, well, that's 10 days times 20, and it's a pain.
Our CAD designs usually take about 2 months.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm doing simple stuff here, and it's taken forever. But I had a question for you. Do you have any experience with direct sales people? Like people that work just for maybe PepsiCo, or they're independent sales people who will just take a product? Because that's what seems like. I work with a local plastic injection molding company here, Accurate Machine and Tool. And by the way, if you want any quotes or anything, I'd love to talk with you, because we're all American. We're ISO 9001 certified, so if you need any of that, we could
Great, Anthony. Reach out to me, definitely.
We could beat Portland for sure, Karen.
Okay.
Anyway, have you had any experience? It seems like there's some people that are out there that will take plastic injection molding products and they just sell them kind of to whoever buys it. I mean, I know a guy from Bruce Sims. He sells to PepsiCo. He sells to all kinds of places, and we're just selling cups basically. I know some other people that they're just selling products, any kind of products for the healthcare or health industry. We've got a little protein powder, you know, the protein, they'll sell them to you with the protein, but it's designed so that you put it on like a keychain, and then they sell more protein powder that way because you use them. But he's not really associated with anyone. He's just an independent salesperson. Do you have any experience with people like that? Because I haven't found any direct marketing people. I've just found these kind of, they're almost like traveling salespeople. They'll just pick up anything and they'll sell it. So that's where I am right now. I've got all the supply chain and everything. We can do inventory straight out of the factory for 6%. So I got everything else lined up in terms of manufacturing.
So you're just looking for people that basically will rep your product. I mean, that's what you're looking for, is for a rep. So, you know, I would look to see, you know, in Albuquerque, who are some technical sales reps, to see if you could find somebody.
Is that what they're called, a technical sales rep?
Well, they're called sales reps.
Okay, I didn't even know what they were called. Just
Yeah,
people who sell stuff better than me.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I'll check into that. I thought, yeah, I don't know. I'm looking for sales right now, and there's some sales people out there that are just real powerhouses at selling, and I don't know if those are the people I need to talk to or not.
Yeah, again, like Susan said, they're usually people are going to want more than one product. Yeah, I would try to find a sales rep in your vertical, the type of things that you're making.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. So we are 4 minutes over. So if we have time for one more question, if there's anybody else who has a question. Okay, I'm going to take that as a no. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope you've gotten some value out of the hour.
Yes, thank you everyone for joining us. We'll be having another webinar with Susan Cornelius next week on February 3rd that you can sign up for on our Global Rainforest website. And we have a lot of upcoming mentor office hours as well that you can find on that website as well. So thank you, everybody. We'll
Bye,
see you
everybody.
later.